Neopets, a college essay, and six-figure freelancing business have in common. They're all part of today's guest's incredible journey into the tech world. I'm talking with Mia Kotalik, who is just 25 years old and has already built a career that most people would be proud of at any age. She's a co-founder of Curie & Co., a company named after her dog and rabbit, who were her coworkers during the COVID lockdown. She has worked with everyone from small nonprofits to Google and major pharmaceutical companies. But Mia's path wasn't traditional. She started programming at 8, originally planning to go into medicine, and turned high school freelancing into a business that hit six figures before she even graduated college. Now she's on a mission to democratize technology, hosting 2 podcasts and creating accessible resources to help others find their own unconventional paths into tech. Fresh off a 3-week trip to Japan and recently moved from Boston to LA, Mia joins us today to share her insights on entrepreneurship, the future of tech, and why she believes there's no single right path to build a career in this industry. So let's welcome Mia. All right, now that that's out of the way, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into, you started coding at 8. What was the first thing you built at 8?
It was probably pretty boring, honestly. My parents got me, I really wanted a computer because a lot of my friends had personal computers or were using their family computer or whatever, but I really wanted my own computer. And I probably wanted to do something stupid. I don't know, go online and play games or probably Neopets. I was really into Neopets. But my parents wanted me to learn something a little bit more interesting about computers before getting my own. So they got me this Python programming book. It was a really thick, big beginner Python book. And they said that if I got through the book, then they would get me a computer. And at the time, I did not want to do anything with programming, did not want to learn how to code, didn't want to do anything. I just wanted a computer. So I rushed through the book, just I think finished in 3 days, but they had these little exercises. So probably the first one was a file upload and parse program, something like that. Nothing exciting or nothing that I really was driven to build. I just was trying to get my computer, so rushing through all of those. I think one of them was a finance planner thing. I remember that. But they're all just little exercises that I went through and showed my dad that I was done with them just to prove that I was doing it. And the whole time I was complaining and saying how much I hate programming and all of that stuff. But once I finished, I did end up, my dad gave me his old computer. So I got accomplished my goal there. But once I got probably halfway through, I learned it was actually kind of cool and that I was getting ideas in my mind for other stuff that I could be doing. I wouldn't recommend that book. I don't remember the name of it, but it doesn't really matter because I don't love it that much. All of the exercises in there were pretty boring, but I did get ideas of, oh, wow, there's a lot that I could be doing with this.
It's funny that you started on Python. I started at 16 mainly, so I'm 10 years older than you. So at this point, it's your career path is 10 years prior to me. So you got to deal in the tech. I wish I had gotten to learn Python. That's my first language, and unfortunately, I was with VB.net,
Yep.
which was even more fun. But yeah, I think programming always starts with that whole I hate this. I still get that to this day when I'm programming. I hate this. Why am I doing this with my life? I feel that's just the theme of a programmer.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
so I also read up that you wrote your college essay on Neopets. You were that obsessed with Neopets back then.
Yeah.
Eh?
So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So that was one of the things that I did early on that I didn't really consider programming for some reason in my head. But looking back on it, it was kind of the start of learning web development tools. But that was one of the things that I just ended up picking up by doing projects. So I would build Neopets guild sites, which was through the platform, but it was all HTML, JavaScript, all those design principles, everything that. So I would be building those sites and I would sell them for Neo points to the other people on the site who would have guilds and then hire me to create them a little landing page for it. So yeah, that was one of my first, I guess, web development projects.
That's fun. I missed that game. I really think it would do well nowadays, though, too.
Yeah, I think so too. It's pretty advanced. They had a
It's like,
lot of cool stuff on there.
yeah, I don't. I remember playing it for hours and hours, and even the fact that they had times. If you left your Neopets for a certain amount of time, they got angry at you and sad. So,
Or die.
um,
They would starve.
it was a good test for the animals I have today, because now I'm definitely more attentive to their needs.
Yeah.
So, what was it balancing doing a job as well as going through school?
Well, so it was interesting because occasionally it was actually helpful for things because if there was a project or something that I had a lot of really understanding professors. So if we had a project that was some sort of assignment demonstrating that you know how to do some sort of feature, and I at the same time had a client that wanted me to develop that feature, they would often accept that as proof of understanding or completing the assignment. So instead of doing one of the made up test assignments, I could show them I developed this application and it does these things, and this is actually being used in production. And I had a really great mobile application. I had this mobile app class that was a requirement for graduation, but it was in a lot of languages that I had already had a couple years of experience producing applications in, but they wouldn't let me skip the class, so I had to take it. But my professor was really nice and he let me show those things that I made and get credit for those and not have to do the beginner assignments over again when I had project experience. So I had a lot of really nice professors who were flexible about things that and allowed me to use some of my client work as credit. So not having to spend a ton of time doing homework. And also there was stuff that I learned by doing that came up later on tests or whatever. And I didn't have to spend a bunch of time studying those things because I got project experience and learned through doing. And so was able to do well on those things because of that experience. So it wasn't too crazy doing both. It went hand in hand pretty well. And then a lot of, when I learned new skills, it was a skill that I could then market. So that also kind of went hand in hand too. I got to double dip a little bit in all of those areas and build something up for my business.
That is the nice part about the path that you took over my path. You have an extensive catalog of work that you can look up anywhere, anytime. Unfortunately, when you go through the corporate path, all of those applications sit behind paywalls and things that aren't publicly available. Then you don't have a repertoire to be able to go out and do things, especially if you're not being. I hate programming. I don't know if you're this, but I hate programming outside of the job. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I to do projects, but I usually end up turning them into something that I can use to either market to clients or, yeah. So I don't have a lot of, I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly the same as what you're describing, but I do stuff that isn't always directly related to a project, kind of on the side, but I usually turn it into something that can then be part of my business in some way. So I don't know if that counts.
Think that the difference is you have a business you're running, so you're looking into that. When I was working as a programmer, it was 8 hours a day programming. At the end of the day, I don't even want to see a line of code, let alone
Yeah.
try and come up with something that might or might not be of use to me. Do you think the private path is definitely a better path to take in terms of with tech industry?
What do you mean by private? Like not as
Um,
a
like you could do just not in public sector, like not going into like big companies, just trying to stay like I guess private isn't really the word, but like smaller companies, freelancing, like doing your own. Do you find you
I
get a
I
little
really
bit more?
I really like it. I mean, I feel like it fits a lot with my lifestyle and interests just because I know that like I've had like more of the traditional 9 to 5 jobs in tech, especially like in college and like internships, trying out different companies and stuff like that. And I always hated it. I mean, there was a few times when I thought like, oh, I maybe I actually shouldn't even be a computer scientist. I mean, I shouldn't go into programming because this is horrible. Just like it's doing developing for tickets, like really small ticket work, and not really getting to do any architecture work or having any input on what a project is going to be or the design or any sort of creative elements. There was even some tickets that were like fixing comments in code, like dead links and like documentation. I don't know, just like very boring stuff that was not exciting at all. And it was like 8 hours of that. And that I hated. So definitely I would not recommend that. And I think, I mean, I wouldn't know because I haven't like climbed up in industry the traditional way in any sense of the word, but I assume that everyone kind of has to start there. And from my experience with, friends, I have friends at Amazon and all these companies, and they all had to kind of go up through that and do a lot of that really just laborious, tiny tasks and mind numbing stuff. And I definitely never wanted to do that. So yeah, the way that I did it, I got to do a lot more creative work and have impact on projects. And yeah, that I would get bored doing that other way. So this is kind of the only way that would work for me. I probably would have quit a long time ago.
You actually touched on a point. Like, I don't think I went down that path either, because I've been programming professionally for well before I was in my career. Like, I was working side gigs where I was like the IT guy, but I was also the web developer. So I had a bunch of knowledge, and I got lucky when I went to the ministry. Oh boy, the government is not where your best tech workers are. I'll give you that. Going in and just being light years ahead of what the industry at that time is in that sector. But I got a lot of say on what I got to work on and how I did it. So I was thankful for that, and not being stuck to just filling out tasks. I only had to do that for 6 months out of my co-op, thankfully.
Yeah, I can believe that. I mean, even when I've been consulting for some businesses, I'm always surprised with like how things are actually going on in the inside. And because there's a lot of things that you'll learn, like even in college, like, oh, these are the industry standards, these are the best practices, and you kind of assume like, oh, this is what all the top people are doing. But then when you actually get in there, it is not what all the top people are doing. I remember I was taking some class that was talking about like software best practices, and my professor was saying something like, "Oh, if this ever happened like at a company you're working at, like you would be fired." And in the back of my head, I was thinking, because I was consulting on a project, I'm not going to name any names, but on one of those big companies, I was consulting on a project, and I was thinking like there is worse stuff happening all the time at this company than what we're talking about right now. But it's just crazy.
Well, yeah, I remember implementing Agile in 2018 in the ministry.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
I
believe it.
completely understand that, like, different different companies have different specs, and surprisingly, everybody starts the same. Everybody starts with the minimal viable product. Everybody like gets the golden nugget of truth and then builds on that, and then it just becomes this giant monolithic thing that nobody wants to touch in the end.
Yeah.
So let's get into your business a little bit. What are some mistakes you made starting out?
Definitely taking everyone and anyone who ever expressed interest in wanting service from me, just taking any clients at all without vetting what they were doing or anything about them or how they are to work with. That was one of the huge mistakes that I made early on. And then also I found, and this is a kind of advice that I give a lot of other people that I'm helping when they start their business, is when you don't have a pricing model down, you haven't done enough projects to know how long things take, and you get roped into a milestone based contract, you have to you have to estimate what you think your price is and then multiply that by 10. And that's what you're going to tell them it's going to cost. And once I kind of got that down, I would often give that range, and then I would actually do the project, and I would let them know this is the worst case scenario. It could be less than that, and a lot of times I would come in less than that, but it things just snowball, especially when you're working with non-technical clients, because they don't know how to price things out on what they're asking for if they don't know anything about technology. And so you have to kind of just add 10 times to what you would think it was going to cost if you were to do it kind of your way. So that was one of the big things. And then I had so many people trying just to take advantage of me. And even when I gave them very clear terms of what the deliverables were going to be, they would try and rope me into doing more work for free. And it was really interesting too, because there was a lot of organizations that I worked with that were women's empowerment kind of organizations, which was interesting. I think it was because early on I had an article on some sort of women tech spotlight thing, and then women's organizations read that article, and then I got some work from it. And I'm not saying all women's organizations are horrible. That's not the message I'm giving out, but I did have some try and take advantage of me. And there was one interesting one that said, because the job description said design and development, it meant that forever in perpetuity, I had to do unlimited design and development for them for free. And it's in the title. No, that's not what the contract says. The contract says 5 pages. You're asking me to design 35 pages. That is 30 more than the contract. It was crazy. So there's just a lot of that. And now I'm very picky with who I work with. And I turn a lot of clients down when I look at their stuff, or I'm having conversations with them and they just don't seem, trustworthy, or they're already trying to kind of rip me off and not appreciate my services. And if you're doing that in the discovery call, then this isn't going to work out later. And then also just charging more. When I first started, I was charging really low for my services, and that attracts a lot of people that will not respect you for your work. And it makes sense. If you're charging that amount, you're probably not worth that much. So that's kind of something that surprises people, that other people who want to become freelancers, is I tell them that you got to raise your rates and you'll actually be working with people that respect you more, because they'll know that you respect yourself, you respect your worth, and you're going to get what you pay for.
I've been going through that a bit of myself, trying to figure out what my pricing range is, especially because I'm no longer programming. I've got my AI set up to actually code everything for me now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do realize it's hard. Especially, everybody wants hourly now too. But what's your hourly lateness? Well, I do project work. I don't want to break that down, because this is, I can do, this is the thing I always said when I was working. I can do 3 hours or 3 weeks of work in 3 hours, or I can do no work in 8 hours. It really depends on the day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to penalize myself by saying, oh, I got it all done fast, so you're going to get charged less. No, that doesn't make any sense. I'm still putting in my effort, my work, my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard. I run into that too, just the whole hourly versus project. Yeah.
So how do you start your online presence if you were going to start as a freelancer trying to get out there?
Yeah, what I would really start with is doing projects. Some people are worried about saying, oh, I don't have a portfolio. Where do I get started? Or I just want to learn stuff and I don't have any work experience. So and it's the way I did it personally, is I skipped to the end a little bit in building projects, and you don't have to have a client for it. If you want to learn web development, you can start out building a website, and it can be for just be creative and make up a coffee shop and pretend that you have a client that's a coffee shop and make a website for that. And that can go in your portfolio. You don't have to lie and say this is a real coffee shop that paid me to do it. You can just tell them that this is a design that I did for this coffee shop, and here it is, and you can play around with it, do whatever, and just keep building those up for your portfolio. And you'll find after your 5th project, you'll look back on your first project and be like, I'm not putting this on my portfolio, this is horrible. But you're always growing and learning, or you can go back and redo it again, and then you're always building something. And I would always, just for anything, I always recommend project-based learning. Don't just, take notes on something and memorize things. Like, actually build something, because that's how you're going to be using it when you actually do something in, the real world anyway. So it's always the best learning tool. You'll learn the fastest, and you'll learn lessons that you never would have learned, reading a textbook. So that's kind of how I recommend marketing, is actually start practicing doing some services. And there's websites, there's like a website called Tech for Good that matches you with like nonprofits. So we're looking for volunteers. And so that's, you can even do real stuff and get that on your portfolio. And it, this isn't just software development. That could be anything like marketing stuff, graphic design, social media, whatever. Just like do something real. And then you can use that for your marketing.
That's amazing. I'll make sure to link that in the description so that everybody can access that resource. I remember learning, I don't know if it's still around anymore, but there used to be learning tools where you would play video games. So like Code Combat, that was a very big fun game of mine that I used to play a lot. Just because, like, putting it into perspective, it was like a strategy game more than anything else to me. But I do emphasize that finding the way you learn and the best way you learn is priority too. There's a lot of tutorial sites out there that you could follow to a T and not learn a thing.
Yeah.
Especially with AI now. I cannot emphasize enough. Please understand how to code before you touch the AI to tell it to code. We're not there yet. Code sucks as an output from AI. And if you do not know how to code, you do not know how to fix your AI code. Speaking from experience, it gets very bad.
Yeah, no, I am so just eternally grateful that I learned how to code before AI existed, because I kind of know myself, and I would be leaning on it a lot. If I didn't have those foundations and learn them the hard way, it would have been hard to force myself to learn it the hard way, especially when I was a kid. So I'm so glad that that did not exist. But I mean, now, of course, I love it as a tool and it's amazing to use. But for sure, I wouldn't want to work with a developer who never learned how to code and just uses AI. So,
It's funny because when 3.5 came out, I just immediately replaced Google with ChatGPT because it was equivalent. I could
yeah,
ask the question I wanted and get the specific answer, whether it's wrong or not.
yeah.
At least I was getting a specific answer instead of the hours and hours of searching through Google and Stack Overflow to find your answer.
Hmm.
Where was your biggest struggle coding? Where was your biggest? Oh, I spent so much time doing this, and
I think part of it, because I jump around so much between different types of projects and languages, is that there's some syntaxes that are just, different between one thing, and it's just like one little tiny thing. And it's on the tip of my tongue is the best way I have to describe it. I know how I want it to be done. I know what I'm looking for, but I don't remember that specific exact syntax for it. And going through Stack Overflow posts and looking through the documentation, whatever for that, to translate it from, oh, I know how to do this in Python, but how do I do this specifically in another language? That would take time. And now I can just ask ChatGPT and it'll tell me. And then that's enough context to go from there. So that's one thing that I love about that, is I don't have to keep going through Stack Overflow to find those little things that.
it is nice to be working on multiple projects. I did find working as a corporate, I was only on one project at a time. So you don't get that refresh of, oh, you're in a different stack with a different entire thing. So you're shifting your mind off of the matter there. So I'd go hours looking at syntax, going, why is this not working? And it's just, I do have a question. Do you So when I was growing up, or when I was going through my start of my career, everybody was specialized in languages. You and I are fairly agnostic in terms of programming language. Do you think that's the right way to go instead of specializing?
I do. And I also think, especially with AI, the actual skill in programming is the design and the architecture of it. And knowing what's going to happen on performance, or how things are going to be easily maintainable, how easy is it for someone else to add code to this project. All of those things are language agnostic, and that's the actual skill. And anybody can memorize syntax. And now that's what AI is replacing, the syntax memorizing part of the job, which is the part that I hate anyway. So I love that about all the AI tools that are coming out. And I don't think that's a very replaceable skill. So if that's what your kind of specialty is for one language, the ins and outs of every single part of the syntax, and you could in your sleep speak that language. I think that's kind of a replaceable skill, and that's not really what is the most valuable part about a software developer. It's the design and the architecture knowledge, and the creative part is
Goodbye,
what I think.
goodbye, COBOL developers.
Yeah.
I really hope we get off those languages. That was one of the biggest things I saw in corporate, is nobody ever wants to invest the money up front to modernize the service, even though it's vastly needed. Like cost difference and all that. It's ridiculous. I do want to get into the experience you have as a woman in a male dominated field. Do you have any advice for other women out there?
I think it kind of goes back to my advice earlier about doing projects and having that experience, because I've seen a lot of other people. I mean, this goes for everyone, not just women, but some things can affect women more than others. But people will come out with a degree, or they have a tutorial or a certificate or whatever, but they've never actually done a project, and they can talk their way through a lot of stuff and get a job, and then people realize they don't know how to do anything in reality. But when you have those projects, it really backs up in what you're saying you know how to do, because you have proof that you've done it before, and that goes a long way. And yeah, that would just be my recommendation, is to be aggressive and creating stuff and explaining that you did those projects, and don't kind of be humble about it. A lot of women get told to be humble, or not talk about what they did, or not seem bossy, or all of those things. And I would just say, like, build something 100% and own that you built that, and tell everybody about it.
It's funny because I'm kind of like the opposite of that. Like I can do the work, but I can't explain how I do it. I just program. I get turned down a lot I was getting turned down a lot for job interviews just because I couldn't explain how to do those things. But you throw me in a stack, and I'm like, no, all done.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've been consulting a lot with recently is helping people hire developers, because there are lots of really great developers that aren't great at marketing themselves. And then there's a lot of developers that are great at marketing themselves and are not good developers. And it's impossible to tell the difference unless you are a developer yourself or you know that world and you know that space. So I see all the time, constantly, like non-technical founders getting totally scammed by all of these developers that they're hiring who have no idea what's going on, but they talk a really good game. And that's one of the things that I learned, the hard way. Sometimes I've hired people who were giant mistakes before, and I've, that everyone kind of has a business and it has run into that here and there. But that's one of the things that I learned was kind of how to find those developers. And I feel like as a developer myself, I have a good sense for it. I mean, you probably feel that way too. So yeah, I would just say a warning for any non-technical founders is get somebody you trust who knows the tech side to help you hire for those roles, because it is impossible if you don't have that insight.
I remember I was in on tech interviews asking questions, but I never really had any say. And I could tell you exactly who would be better than who we hired, but I didn't get to say because it just is, I didn't get final say. I would try and articulate like, okay, they said this, so it means like they haven't done these things, or like it's really easy if you're a developer to understand other developers and what they've built.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of like code between all of us. Let's get into the creator economy side of things. You have a podcast called Technically a Podcast. What made you starting?
Honestly, it was just, I wanted to learn stories of how other people got into tech. I just, at conferences and stuff like that, it was interesting to learn people's backgrounds. And there's a lot of ways to get into tech besides get a CS degree and then get a job at a tech company. And I that's not what my path was. So I always find it interesting learning what other people's paths are. And it's also, especially with the state of how things are, if somebody told me that they wanted to get into computer science, I would not recommend the get a computer science degree and go to a tech company path. So I just wanted to hear what was out there and found it interesting. And yeah, I wanted to share those stories.
2 diplomas and basically never needed them to get any of my jobs, aside from the co-op that I started my career on.
My first mentor, he was a senior software developer and his degree was in music. So
programmers are just, it's a way of thinking. I don't think it's a way of doing.
Yeah, 100%.
What has been one of the guests that you found most interesting in their journey?
This is going to sound biased. It's a little biased. And this is an unreleased episode, but it's a really special episode. It's my mom. Her journey was really interesting and it shaped a lot of how I got into technology too. So yeah, that's a teaser for that episode. I know that's not a very interesting answer, but that's kind of what's fresh in my mind right now is she's got a very interesting story and background. And she grew up in Compton in LA. She was raised by her grandmother, and it's just a crazy story that I never got the full version of really until I sat down with her. So yeah.
What made you want to sit down with your mother?
She's been very influential in my life. I'm going to start crying if we keep talking about this, but sorry. No, yeah. So that, and also when you kind of go back to when you asked me, as a woman, how did I go through a very male dominated field? And part of the answer is I never thought about that when I was a kid. I wasn't, that's a man's job, because the best example I had for a woman who was in technology was my mom. So I didn't have to look very far. And I'm so lucky to have had that role model, because that's, a lot of what people don't have is they've never seen somebody who looks like them in that field that they want to do. So they can't see themselves there. They don't have the confidence to say, this is what I do. This is what I want to do, because I've never seen it. And I never had that. I never had to worry about that because I had someone right there. So yeah, that was one of the biggest, I think, blessings that I've had and what I want for other people too, which is why I, started a podcast and try to put myself out there, even though I'm shy and kind of introverted, but the more people do it.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Hey, it's funny. Just a podcast or two ago, I'm terrified of being on video. I do this purely because it satiates my curiosity. It allows me to connect with people like you, difference of opinions, and just seeing what makes the world tick. Canada has a lot of political issues that I like to get into, but there's so much that I feel people can learn by just talking it out. So I
Yeah.
always want to just have a space where we can just have conversations and showcase like everybody's different, everybody's perspective's different. We've got different paths, and some of them end up in pretty much the same spots. It's just a small world. Do
Yeah.
you do you? I want to get into a little bit of the future.
Okay.
What do you think? Where do you think web development tech is going in the next 5 years with AI?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that I haven't everything is changing so fast in that ways that I have no confidence in what my predictions will really be. But one thing that I am pretty confident in is a lot of people are worried about, oh, where are tech jobs going to go? Where are programmers going to be totally replaced by AI? And I'm not necessarily worried about that side of things because, like I was saying before, I think the real skill in it is that creative side and that software architecture side and the design side of things. And that skill is super flexible. Like that can be applied in so many different ways. And I think that there will always be room for that and always be like whenever AI tools come out, like I see people kind of get worried, but there's also the other side where there's that group of people who are excited because they see, wow, there's like, I was able to do so like maybe one project, now I can do 100 projects in that span of time. Like this is so exciting, and this is my dream. Like I always have 100 projects in my mind that I want to do all the time, and now it's like I'm actually able to be doing it. And then also on the flip side of things, like this problem will go away eventually, but in the interim there are a lot more jobs for people to fix the broken code. Like on Upwork, that's like every other post is like, help me, I've made this app with AI and it doesn't work, I need an actual software developer. So it's bringing a lot of jobs in for those people. Like anybody who's worried on that side of things, like there is this kind of bubble where now we're seeing more software developers appreciated because they realize, oh, actually maybe it's not really easy and I can just do it with ChatGPT. But I do think eventually it will be that good, but you'll still have somebody on the creative side of things making it work for your business and seeing those things that somebody might not have thought about and doing the creative part of it. And I mean, honestly, if that's where we're moving to make it more creative, then that's great with me. Like get rid of all of the stuff that I don't like about programming and just have me work on the creative side. And I love that. It's like the
Yeah,
problem solving that I love and all of those little things. So if that's what the job's becoming, that's just getting better and better.
it's funny because now I'm writing research papers on the difference in interfaces between LLMs, and I'm currently working on one that goes into accessibility. I actually think we're going to experience a time where we finally get to skip the mobile device. Like we finally get to skip over the phone and get to a standard that everybody kind of understands, voice, human interaction type of deal. I think it's going to be better on the senior side of things because it'll integrate seamlessly with everything that already exists.
Yeah. I wrote kind of an article a little bit about getting too convenient, everything getting too convenient, and kind of the scary sides of that. I mean, obviously, there's tons of pros, and I totally see where you're going with just voice activated, all of that. But one of the things I was specifically thinking about was in the context of searching, Google searches. And if you are taking away all of the manual work behind those research skills, which even if you think of Google compared to going to a library, there's obviously more skills in the library side than on Google is easier. But if you make it too convenient where they're just giving you an answer and you're taking out all of the little steps behind it, there's a lot of opportunity for manipulation and you don't know who's giving you your answer or where that came from or if it's true. So that's a whole nother can of worms that's I find really interesting is, and I mean, Google does it too.
Yeah.
Obviously, all those search results are paid for. SEO is totally, all that's paid for. And so there's already a layer of it. But if you think about even going even further or even more convenient where there's no work on your end at all and you're just getting information, it gets scary. You have to really trust who's giving that information.
There is there's do you know Emod? He's the ex Stable Diffusion CEO.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know of his paper, The Last Economy?
I've know about it, but I was through an Instagram post, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that.
And he proposes essentially everybody having their own AI to look
Yeah.
at for them, like their own
Yeah.
individual AI. I think we'll actually eventually get to that.
Yeah, I
When we
mean, that's
get
what
to,
I'm personally moving towards. Like, I have my model that
Yeah.
I know that where all the inputs are coming from, and that's what I know I can trust that one a
just
little bit better. But but I mean, not everyone's going to do that, which is a little scary. Is those people who are getting fed the information, we gotta be careful about that, and just critical thinking, not losing that muscle, because that's a muscle that everybody has to maintain. And if we make it so easy to never have to flex that muscle, then it's gonna atrophy on everybody.
that's where you just learn to love politics, and then you have to flex that muscle all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
Where do you want things to go?
Yeah, I think a little bit what I said before is just like creative side, like take out all of that boring parts and the repetitive parts and the syntax memorization parts, and just creative architecture, design side of things, and the productivity as far as help me get all of these 1,000 things I want to do that I never dreamed that anybody could do in one lifetime. Help me be able to do that.
Really want to get into. I have a sci-fi TV series in my head. I'm waiting now that Sora 2 just came out. I'm waiting for it to get to about 20 minutes of length, and I'm going to be like, here's a new sci-fi series that we can watch. I have so much creative content I want out of my head. So eventually, what the Weird Canadian is going to turn into is a media company. I want to turn it into like have TV shows, like kid shows, and just kind of be sovereign. Like allow people to monetize their creations, taking like the proper portion, like margin that I take out of it. Like, be a human to these creators instead of what the platforms are doing now and just using their data to make themselves more money.
That's really cool. Yeah. All of the creative kind of, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but possibilities with this technology is really cool. And there's a whole, dark side of it on ways to use it to suppress creativity and get rid of those traditional art forms. But I also think that I think that's a threat and something that a lot of companies are doing. And I think that's the wrong approach. And if you actually embrace creativity, you're going to get way farther and way better results. And there's so many people that are amazing, and them plus this technology, it's like mind blowing.
The thing that I have been contemplating on is if it does go that direction, I honestly see the rise of superheroes and supervillains. To be honest with you, because now anybody could close off their system for an LLM. They could build them any suit, any power, like biohacking that they want to do.
Yeah.
That I really do hope we can work towards being more universally like helping instead of where we're at now.
Yeah. And there's also with
Seems
that,
like,
there's like when you're talking about like anybody could just do this on their own. That's another thing that drives me crazy with like censoring and lobotomizing models based on like what trying to change what they got from the data and like putting filters over it, or like there's cases that come out that are horrible and sad of like people being manipulated by ChatGPT or trying to use it as their therapist and it gave them bad advice and all this stuff. But I think it's so much more important to go back a few steps to the education side of things and really teach people how these models work. Because even if you put in all these protections, what it's going to do is it's going to lobotomize the model, make it not work very well for anybody. And then also somebody could just make their own without any of those protections and do all the same horrible things. So like trying to make the model, perfect and not have the ability to do anything bad is not the right way. It's, we need to be teaching people how these tools work, and so they know what to trust from them and know how to critical think on their own. And yeah, I mean
it's actually funny you just mentioned that, because I literally just wrote a paper the other day about extending out the interface into a 3D representation to be able to understand how the model actually gathers that information.
Yeah, that would be incredible. But yeah, it drives me crazy when everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is so dangerous. We can't have people using this. But like, there's so many things that we use every single day that are really dangerous if you don't know how to use it. Like if you think about a stove, like that could go really, really wrong too. But people are, using some common sense with how they interact with it. And they had, somebody was helping them learn how to use it. And not everybody, has that obviously, but I think more resources could be put into that education side and empowering people to critical think and learn how to use these tools in a way that is responsible rather than just trying to dummy proof the tool. I think we need to give people more credit for what they can learn on their own.
Fortunately, for decades, we haven't. The place we're at now is kind of a show of that. I do hope we can emphasize more learning, and I'm hoping that the models can start being more learning oriented. So not just giving you what you want, but also why it is what you want would be nice at the very least. I know I don't remember when, but at some point ChatGPT lost its ability to actually check to see what it was outputting, and I hated that. I'm like, yeah, you made the model better, but at the same time, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what information it's coming from. So now I'm feeding it through several different AIs just to figure that out.
Yeah.
I hope next year, because the laws of exponential, next year we'll have something that will be a little bit more, something better. And I just hope somebody comes out with a model that's just like, you know what? Actually, that's the other thing. The Intelligent Internet company also has a model that they're releasing too. So you can use that for free.
That's cool.
I think they have a GitHub for it. So that seems like a good ending point for this. I just want to follow up. Where can people connect with you? Mention anything you have coming up?
Yeah, so the best place is going to be on Instagram. My handle is helloitsmia.tech, and that's like where kind of the hub of everything else is, and you can get other places from there, like my Substack. I have technically a Substack. Everything is usually technically but yeah, that would be the best place to get all of those links and information, and yeah, that's what I would link to in the description and everything. That's pretty much the hub of where everything goes.
And do you have any final takeaways for anybody out there?
I think just, if you're looking to get into technology, is you don't need anybody's permission to start doing that. You don't need to wait for an internship or an answer back on a job interview or finishing your degree. Just go and do it. There's so many free resources out there, and one of the best skills is kind of learning without being traditionally taught. Like that's what I look for in developers I hired. If I gave you this project but got a lot of information, could you figure it out yourself? So that's one of the best skills to have, and one of the best ways to start building that skill is just get out there and think of a project you want to do and do it. And then if you're doing anything with AI, I would pull back the curtain a little bit, try and figure out, how is this information getting to me? Who's controlling it? How does an LLM work? And that'll take you a long way as well.
And then you also might end up getting into consciousness and how humans work a little bit too.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much, and stay weird.